Martin, can you try and share your presentation maybe with Shushi? Maybe she can show it on her screen, and then you'll just tell her when to move to the next page.
There was difficulty in Martin sending his presentation to us.
Oh,
No, I can't send a presentation.
Can you send it on transfer now?
Yes, I can do that.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay, Carol's just transferring it to Shushi now. I don't know why this is not showing all the way down.
Oh, it seems to be moving now.
it is moving, but it's not on full presentation mode.
Oh,
Okay, I see the session has started. We have 426 people on the call. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's iTOOsday. We're going to start shortly. We're just sorting out the presentation to make sure that it appears in full screen. Thank you to everyone for joining the call.
okay, tell me when I can start.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's iTOOsday. Just a few technical issues. I think we've sorted it out. So joining me on this presentation is Fiso, our PI product head, and Martin Vass, our industry expert that everybody knows. And today's very insightful presentation is based on rectification costs and remedial costs. We'll be looking at the differentiation, the applicability, and we'll also touch on coverage issues and adequate cover. So there is a chat box. Please place your questions. We'll be happy to answer them. And I'll hand over to Martin. Thank you, Martin, and welcome.
Shushi, thank you very much indeed. And good morning to you. Sorry, Shushi. Sorry, do you want to finish? Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, go. We're ready for you.
Okay, I go. All right. So good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. This morning, as Shushi said, we're doing the rectification costs and the cover under the various policies. But we're having a lot of problem on a number of the claims regarding the initial documentation and the contracts. So I'm just going to briefly go over the kind of contracts we have to deal with. And I'm bringing up, I hope we can see the next slide, which is the PROXA agreement. And this is the PROXA agreement, which is a client consultant agreement. And this is the one that we prefer. The engineers or the architects entering into this agreement with their client. And why we like these contracts is because it limits the liability and sets out very clearly what the duties are of the professional who is entering this contract. And you'll see when I go through, and I've brought a number of quite small claims up, but just to really show you the problems we're experiencing now regarding the coverage under the policies and the problems we have when a contract is not entered into between the parties. So this is just a blank document. This is a PROXA, which is the Client Consultant Professional Services Agreement. And if we go to the next page on this agreement, and I made it quite large, it says here the maximum amount of compensation, and this is in this PROXA agreement, the maximum amount of compensation payable by the consultant to the client is really twice the fees. What it states out here. So if you've got a fee of R1 million, you've limited your liability here to twice the fees. And this is what we prefer. It's very clearly set out. It also takes out any consequential losses, etc. So it's very clearly defined between the engineer, architect, and the client. But what we're finding more and more, in the body of the prox agreement, we've got twice the fees. At the back of the prox agreement, there's a tick box that you can choose. So there are 3 boxes to choose at the back. You either tick, which is the 3rd one, twice the fees. So if that's tick, that is the set out. But the other 2 available to the client is a specific amount. So the client may say, no, I'm not interested in twice the fees. I want twice the fees gives me 2 million. I actually want 5 million. So I'm not prepared to accept twice the fees. The other one we're seeing more and more, and I'll show you one of the claims we have now, and that is the available proceeds of the policy. So the client will say to the engineer or the architect, what is your coverage under your policy? And he says, I've got 20 million. And the client says, I want access to that 20 million. Obviously, via yourself, I want to put in the agreement, in the prox agreement, that in fact, the coverage given me for a claim is the proceeds of your policy, namely 20 million rand. We're seeing a lot more of that now happening. The client is not accepting twice the fees. So going forward, it has to be realized by insurers that where we in the past, we would have a claim, say of 5 million or 6 million, we're having claims much larger, and I'll show you that when I bring up a few slides just now. So that is what's happening more and more. But what we're also finding is that the engineers and the architects are not entering into agreements. They're writing letters, there's a quotation goes in, the client accepts the quotation, and they go ahead with the work. That works absolutely fine until the wheels fall off. And then it's what's happening with the paperwork. And you'll see now in a couple of these instances, it really hasn't worked. So that is a problem we're having a lot now. The no contracts are being signed by the various parties. So I'll go to the next one. And this is a typical example. This is a filling station. This is a Google aerial view of it. This is a filling station and a little, like you have all filling stations, a little cafe, a little coffee shop next door to it. Our engineer was appointed to design the building and to design the foundations. But what he wasn't employed for was to do the initial earthworks. So they went ahead and did the earthworks, and I'll draw the next slide. So they went and they removed about 2 meters of material over the site. They brought in fresh material. They compacted, as you see, they water it, they're compacting it, and they put it into a level surface. Our engineer then designed the foundations, but what he didn't do, he didn't go along and check what they had done, because he says it was not part of my duty. But meanwhile, he's signing off for the foundations. So we have a problem here in the duties of the engineer. We don't believe you should split those duties. If the engineer is designing the foundations, he must know what the existing material is. So he must be involved in the original earthworks. And I don't think our engineer should go in on almost like a part contract where another party has done the earthworks and he comes in effect accepting those earthworks by designing the foundations. So he designed the foundations and they built the building. So what has happened, that building has cracked up very, very badly, as you see, very, very badly indeed. And there obviously is discussion now what to do with this building, whether we in fact take this building, we knock it down, or we start extensive repairs. The building's dropped about 300 millimeters. It's quite a dramatic drop. During our investigations, we found that the problem arises below those earthworks. When they did those original earthworks, which you see there, which is about 200 to 300 millimeters deep, underlying that is very, very poor material. So there's that poor material below this work they're doing there has failed and caused the entire earthworks and the building to go down. So obviously they're holding our engineer liable because he said, I designed the foundations. And this is this split responsibility we're seeing more and more, where they're bringing almost a part in. They give one part to one engineer to do one part to another engineer to do another part. Really, the engineer must walk away from that type of thing and says, unless you give me the whole contract, I'm not prepared to sign off for foundations when in fact I haven't done anything to do with the earthworks. So you see the building is really settling down very, very badly indeed. And this is an ongoing, we just started this investigation at the moment. We have problems going forward. I can see it coming up that our engineer has signed off for the building, and yet he was not involved in the earthworks. So there is a problem here. Also, there's no limitation of liability. There was purely a quotation and acceptance by the two parties. So there's no limitation of liability, really no details other than he signed off for it. So problem we have with that.
And just a
Okay.
question, Martin.
Please.
That would be treated as remedial cost if this engineer has to place that claim under.
Absolutely right. This and Shushi, I'm showing you quite clearly there.
Yeah.
It's more than this is not the kind of polyfiller and paint. This is in fact taking that building down and putting it back up again, which is between 3 and 4 million rand. But here we have no contract.
Okay. And also tell me, what was this project value?
Well, his involvement was 60,000 rand.
And the value of the entire project?
The value of the whole project about 10, the building about 4.
Okay.
So he's going to be held liable now for 4 million, having only been paid 62,000 rand.
Okay.
Because he didn't enter into a contract. So, and we're having this more and more like this. So he quietly says, I'll do all this work for 62,000. The client sends him a letter saying, okay, I accept your 62, go ahead. He does the work. Now, what is his liability now? He hasn't restricted his liability. And I think he has a problem here that he's signed off for the foundations. He's saying, well, of course, I didn't do the earthworks, but he's signed off for the foundations. So I think there could be a liability here against the engineer.
Really? Okay.
Okay, so I really have this kind of problem now, and we're having it more and more and more, that they're sending a quotation in, there's a letter of acceptance, but nothing further. They don't go the next step and sign up a full contract between the two parties. I tell you why they don't do it, because he says, well, it's only 62,000 rand. It is only 62, but he's going to be held liable for 4 million. So, you know, we really do have this problem. Next one I'm going to now. This is a bridge on the way down to Durban near Pietermaritzburg, and our insured is a trucking company, and I'm showing this for a particular reason. Our insured is a trucking company. He was set, and they make precast concrete products in Johannesburg. So that's like pipes and a box culverts, those kind of box section culverts, concrete culverts. They make them and then they send them all over the country from Johannesburg. They were sending this down to Durban. And the truck that was sending it down is this truck here. It's got a crane on the back we normally call a HIAB crane. That crane, in fact, is fitted on the truck, and that crane can load and offload the pipes, offload the culverts, etc. So this is how it went down. Now, according to the driver, while he was driving, that crane lifted up. Now, to our mind, that's not possible. That crane is hydraulically driven, and in fact, that truck can't move and operate the crane at the same time. You have to actually go to the back of that crane, disengage the drive to the truck itself, and engage the crane. So in our mind, it can't lift up while you drive. But according to the driver, it lifted up. So while he was driving down, it hit this bridge and hit it quite badly, as you see. All the steel has been pulled out. There's a closer shot of it here. You can see it quite clearly. It's demolished one part of the beam here, caused extensive damage. So what has happened? Sanral obviously own this bridge. They are the operating for the government. It's a government body. They are saying they got an engineer involved, and the engineer is wanting to demolish that section of the bridge, which is that piece there, which is that beam across that one carriageway, take it down and put a new beam up. The problem, this is on the N3 highway between Durban and Johannesburg. If you close the N3 highway, it's a major problem on its own. So what's happened here with this trucking company? The trucking company only has liability of 2.5 million in their policy. That is their maximum liability in their maximum coverage in their policy. If we have to take that beam down and put it back up, it's about 8 million rand. So really what the insurers are doing here is holding the hand of the insured. They say, we know you've only got 2.5 million. You're being sued for 8 million. We're prepared to help you out or look after you. So what we've done now, we've appointed our own engineers, our own team of engineers, and they've gone down there. And in conjunction with ourselves, we have submitted a proposal now to Sanrail to, in fact, repair those beams, to take away that deformed steel there and to, in fact, reinstate that beam back to its original shape. We believe, looking at the design, that it was over-designed originally. And this is a very old bridge. It was over-designed way back 30 or 40 or 50 years ago. And we believe we can use that over-design to repair this bridge and give it back to Sanrail. That will save us, and that will bring the claim down closer to the 2.5 million, which in fact he has cover under his policy for. The problem here, it is a Sanrail bridge. The Sanrail can do what they want with the bridge, it's theirs. We can't dictate to them what they want or what they can do. So we put our whole proposal forward to Sanrail and say, we believe you can repair it, X amount, 2.5 million, we can repair this bridge, or you can repair the bridge and put it back to its original condition. Sanrail at the moment are taking a very back step on this and saying, really, we've been told we have to demolish this whole section of bridge, and they may go ahead and do it and sue our insured for the 8 million rand. Whether that would then end up in a court battle to say you could have repaired it for 2.5, we're not sure at this point of time. But here's a guy who has 2.5 million. I don't know what a trucker, what coverage he should take out. Maybe 2.5 is a normal amount to take out. I'm not sure. But certainly here, it doesn't cover the damage. So this is what we're involved at the moment. We've written to Sanrail. We're waiting for their response. We hope they say, come together, let's have a meeting and have the engineers sit across the table together and try to sort this out and get back to our 2.5 million, our sum insured. All right, here is a split responsibility, and we often get this. This is a design that was done on a road near Pretoria, and you see that box section there, almost in the middle. That is a drainage, so the water comes off the road into the drain and is fed away. On the right side is what we call a reinforced earth wall, and I'll show you there. These earth walls are made up of panels and with steel bars set into the back of these panels. They're long steel bars that go into the fill. So when you build the fill, which you see on the left-hand side, build the road, those long bars go into the soil. And by these long bars being embedded in the soil, embedded in the backfill material, it in fact supports those walls. So those walls then don't fall over. So you've got an engineer, which is our insured, who designed that box culvert for the stormwater, and a separate design was then done for this reinforced earth wall. So what's happened here is as you see here, the reinforced earth wall is peeling away, it's breaking away. And as far as we can see, what's happening here is that box culvert is putting pressure, or that open drain is putting pressure on the reinforced earth wall and pushing it over. So now we have to rectify this wall regardless. You see it's badly cracked. It's cracked further up. I can see another. You can see the cracks there, and you can see the cracks there. So the top part of this wall has to be removed, taken down, and replaced. Cost us about 3.5 million rand to take this out and replace it. They are saying to our engineer, our insured, your box or your open drain put pressure on our wall and causing it to fail. We are saying, as far as we're concerned, the reinforced earth guys, they knew that that channel was there. They should have designed the wall to take the load of that channel. And this is again the problem we're having, where you've got split responsibility between two engineers. So the one engineer designs the earth and designs this culvert for the storm, and then the other engineer designs this reinforced earth wall. So who then picks up the responsibility when this thing fails? And it's causing more and more problems now in a lot of our claims, where you've got more than one professional body involved in the claim. Again here, and I'm just looking at my note here, again, there was no contract entered into here. It's very, very annoying. Very annoying indeed. Okay, I'm going to slightly, okay. Next one here is an architect. So the architect was called in design, this is a very fancy house you see there, it's down in Cape Town, a house about 33 million. And they designed a fireplace both in the lounge and in the upstairs bedroom. They designed this and they went out to a specialist consultant who in fact designs and installs these fireplaces. They installed it both in the lounge and in the bedroom. The very first time he used it, he'd been in the house about 3 months. Winter started and he turned the fire on and as you see, caused extensive damage. So what we can determine here is the person who actually installed that flue. The flue is on the right hand side. It's this kind of silver wires is the flue. He incorrectly designed that flue. In effect, causing all that woodwork to heat up and eventually catch fire. In fact, that fire was only on for maybe half an hour before it caught fire. Luckily, someone was there and it didn't burn the house down. So our architect has overall responsibility. So he signed off on completion of the project. He signed off the beneficial occupation, final completion. The subcontractor who designed that flue was appointed by the client. He's a selected subcontractor appointed by the client. So initially they're looking to our architect to say, you have overall supervision here. You should in fact make quite sure that the subcontractor did it correctly, which he hasn't done. So they're looking initially to our architect. We have a contract here. We have a limitation of liability here. Everything is in order. The problem is going to be here, who actually is at fault here? Is it the subcontractor who obviously didn't do the wrapping and the insulation correctly, or is it the architect? So here we're going to be relying very much on our limitation of liability, although I think the repairs will only be about R1 million, which will fall within that limitation anyway. So here we're in dispute between the subcontractor and between the client and between the architect. This one here, these are what you call methane detectors. And you put these into a mine, going back many, many years, way before anyone I'm sure was around, certainly in the UK, in the mines there, they used to take little canaries down in a cage, shame. And when the canary dropped dead, you left the mine as quickly as you could. Now we've got slightly more sophisticated than the canary in a cage. We now have these electronic methane detectors. So in this particular mine, a coal mine, we put in 330 of these detectors for about 15 million rand. The coverage under the policy on this particular thing was only 5 million, even though he entered into a 15 million rand contract. What happened here is these circuit boards that were put into these units, 330 of these units, was imported from China. And when they arrived, this is how they looked. They looked fine. They were tested by our insured. He was happy with that. And therefore, he then put what that brown covering is, which is an epoxy covering, because he was worried that was the kind of hot element of the circuit board. So he covered that so there would be no spark, no electricity at all coming from there, possibly ignited the methane. So we go ahead and we install 330 of these units in the mine. We install these in the mine and they start to fail. And on the first failure, we removed that circuit board, that one there, but of course we can't access the chips because we now covered it with an epoxy coating. But what we can assume is, looking back at that one, is that in fact there's a fault in that circuit board supplied by the Chinese. So what we've had to do here is to go into the mine and one by one remove those methane detectors, 330 of them to be taken out and replaced in the mine. Replacement cost about 4 million. The problem being here, he had a 15 million contract and he only had coverage for 5 million contract. That's what he said in his policy. He only does work up to 5 million rand. In fact, he had a 15 million rand contract here. The mine were very accommodating. The mine said, we won't go against you for the closing of the section of the mine while you remove and replace these methane detectors. We won't go for you against that. But you must take all these out and replace them for about 4 million rand. And the insurer said, you're way underinsured by 300%. So of the claim value of about 4.5 million that it cost to take out and replace these, the insurer settled for just under 300,000. And that was accepted by the insured. So we paid out, or the insurers paid out the 300,000, and the other 4.2 million they had to carry themselves. We're getting a lot of these down in the Eastern Cape, in the kind of Port Elizabeth, East London area, or Quebec area. And these are wind turbines. I thought I'd put that picture of a wind turbine and what they used to have in this country, which is these little windmills. You see the size difference there. So you can see, going back to that picture, there's two wind turbines there, which you can see from the shadows, one near the top and one near the bottom of the picture. But these wind turbines, which are erected on very large concrete foundations, are actually assembled on the site, and they come in on trucks. And you can see, if you look at that top picture, to give some idea of the size of the blades on the turbines. There are 3 blades, and if you look at the truck at the top and look at the length of that blade, they are huge. And these are either brought in from overseas or manufactured locally. There's a place in Durban that makes them. And if you go to Durban, in fact, I've got stacks of these in Durban. They're then transported to the site with these very long low beds. The problem being is that to get these trucks around the roads is very, very difficult. And you have to go out ahead and plan the route exactly where you're going to take this blade. I'm showing you now an aerial shot of the road. So this is the road, the final section going onto the site. So it really follows the contour of the ground. The problem being here is when the blade came along, it couldn't go around the corners. There were embankments in the way and they couldn't take the blade onto the site. So the blade had to be offloaded and left on the side while they changed the profile of that road. So our engineer, going back to that. Our engineer had a limitation on the contract of 1.6 million. That was in terms of his Proxer agreement, and that was signed by the client. The claim is about 12.6 million. The 12.6 million is to go there and widen these roads so that the blade can traverse down those dirt roads. So at the moment, we haven't settled the claim. The client is not happy, obviously, to pick up the difference between 1.6 and 12.6 million. But he signed the contract. As far as we're concerned, that is it. We're just waiting for a final acceptance by the client that he's going to pick up that difference.
Sorry,
This
Martin. Martin,
Yeah, go.
just on that windmill, was that a car policy or a PI policy? That was
A PI.
Okay, all right.
A PI.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, because, no, it wasn't a car policy because the road was built correctly according to the design, all right? So what happened here is that the embankments were too high to get the blade around the corners. So if you look at the top one here, they widened that road considerably to get the blade around the corner. So yes, they're saying to the engineer, you should have designed the roads knowing the length of that blade and knowing the kind of sweep of the blade as it went around the corners, and you should have made it wide enough. So yeah, it's a PI claim against our engineer.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, but bear in mind, this is quite a nice one, is not the right word, but it's quite convenient for insurers that we limit our liability 1.6 million, where the claim was 12.6 million. And this is why, going right back to the beginning of the talk, and this is why a lot of clients are saying, we're not prepared to accept this limitation of liability at twice the fees. And this one reinforces that argument. Whereas the client saying, it wasn't our fault that you under-designed the road and didn't make it wide enough, and yet we're picking up 11 million rand. And you can have some sympathy for the client by saying that. It wasn't his fault. He put it out to professionals, and they didn't design the road correctly. So I can understand why more and more the clients are saying, we're unwilling to accept twice the fees. This one here was also quite an interesting one. This was a piling contract. This was in Johannesburg. So this is piles going into the ground. As you know, these are concrete. They drill a hole, they put steel in the hole, and they pour concrete. In essence, I won't go into detail how you build a pile. That'll be another talk. So what happened here? Our engineer designed the piling setup. So what you do, you give a drawing and you show exactly the position of each pile, because on top of those piles, you're going to place your building. So you work out exactly where you want the pile, and then the actual design of the pile, fun enough, is not done by our engineer, it's done by the piling contractor. So what happens in a piling contract, you say to the contractor, I need a pile in the ground that can take 80 tons. And then it's over then to the piling contractor to put in a pile in the ground that can take that 80 tons. So, but we give him the position of the pile. We give him a drawing, we say, this is where you want the pile's position, and go ahead and do it. Anyway, they then set out the piles, they put the piles in position, and then the site was then handed over to the contractor. The contractor then start putting the building on top of the piles. Almost immediately, the contractor got onto site. He found that, in fact, the piles were in the wrong place. And on investigation, the drawings were incorrect. So the drawings issued by our insured, our consultant, were incorrect. Because the piling contractor was still there, our insured said to the piling contractor, go ahead, we'll give you the new piling positions and go ahead and install the new piles. And the cost of installing those new piles was about 2.2 million rand. But it was much cheaper to have it there while all the machines were on site rather than re-establish the entire site to put in the new piles. The problem here, he never told the broker or insurer that a claim had arisen. So they went ahead and installed all those new piles in the right position, discarded the old piles, and then some weeks later informed the broker that there's a claim being made against them. So insurers looked at this situation, and after a lot of debate, the insurer said, although you breached the policy conditions, we're prepared to come to the party. And in fact, the insurers had paid out the claim to the client, to their client. Even though it's not only late notification, the work was completed at the time. You may remember that one, Sushi.
Yes, I do actually.
Okay, this was a hospital which was considerably under-designed, and virtually every part of this hospital had to be redesigned and reconstructed, right from the staircases, right down to the walls, right the slabs. This entire hospital really had to be redesigned. Our designer made a mistake on every single part of it. Just as an example there, if you look at that staircase virtually in the middle of the picture there, there is in fact no column in the middle holding it up. I don't know what's holding it up, just sheer luck. I don't know why it doesn't fall down. But anyway, so the claim here was about 32.8 million against our consultant. He had a limit of indemnity under the policy of 20 million. He didn't have an agreement, a prox agreement. There was no limitation of liability. So as far as insurance is concerned, the claim would be up to the indemnity under the policy, which was the 20 million. What would happen to the other 12.8 million really was not insurance concern at that time. So they went ahead, the client went ahead, it's a government hospital. The government went ahead and gave the contractors to go ahead to do all the repairs, all the rectification work on this whole building. What has amazed us, that they've incurred 32.8 million. The government, we have 20 million on the policy, but no one ever came and asked us for the money. It's quite a very unusual situation. There were lots of letters back and forth holding us liable, but no one ever came forward and said we demand 32 or 20 million from you. So the rectification work was completed and no one came knocking on our door, which is a very unusual situation. So the insurers really walked away from 20 million. Here we have, this is down in Durban. This is the ShopRite Checkers down in Durban. This is a new warehouse. And following, if you remember, and maybe someone remember, when were the riots in Durban? When was that in, I can't remember.
2021.
21 was it? Okay, well done. Thanks, Susie. In 21. So following the riots in 21, ShopRite Checkers had a major problem with their insurers. Their insurers were saying, unless you put further security in place, we're not prepared to renew the policy. So they gave a contract out there. First, they gave an order out to our insured to design a 2 meter high wall, which is, in fact, I do have one of the wall itself. No, this is a 2 meter high wall, reinforced, etc., etc. That 2 meter high wall would then stop anyone coming into ShopRite Checkers. What happened here? That wall, which had been built in the distance there, built by WBHO, that wall, in fact, was built on a servitude. You're not allowed to build a wall on a servitude. So under this wall is sitting a very large water pipe and the sewer lines underneath this wall. Now, why no one picked up that there were manholes all over the place, that no one saw these manholes, and yet they built the whole wall. But if you go back to that picture there, if you look at the middle, the top corner where there's a 90-degree on the building itself, you'll see there's a gap between the end of the building and the wall itself. That gap allows the trucks to pass around the back of the building. If the wall was put in the correct position, there was no gap there. That wall, in fact, almost touched the building. You certainly couldn't get a truck behind there. Now, ShopRite Checkers were very keen to leave that gap there because it was very convenient for them to get the trucks through and back into the loading area at the back. So after a long discussion with the Durban municipality, ShopRite Checkers agreed to take over all the piping in the servitude for, I presume, forever. I didn't see the contract eventually reached between the two parties. But what they in fact are saying that any failure of those pipes, either the sewer pipes or the main water pipe or anything, ShopRite Checkers will rectify whatever happens to those pipes. And that gave them an extra 2.5 or almost 3 meters of space, which in fact allowed trucks to go around the back of the building. So what the claim was against our insured at the time was something in the region of 5 to 6 million rand. In fact, because ShopRite Checkers had took over those pipes, they left the wall where it is, and no claim arose out of this situation, which is also quite unusual. Our insured here is an engineer who just checks. What happens here, they put this racking up in warehouses, and they're meant to take a certain load. 20 tons, 21 tons are meant to be taken on this frames. So his job is to come out once it's all erected and sign off, saying they put it up correctly, the bolts are in the correct position, everything is correct, I'm happy with it, and he signs it off. And that's what he did. This is one in Johannesburg, a very large warehouse in Johannesburg. He signed off all this racking, all this framing. So what happened then? It all fell down. So this fell down, and all these goods valued about 25 million rand came down in a big heap. What upsets us a bit is that, and if you look at the right-hand side of that photograph, you can see everything's still wrapped in plastic, but the owner said, I'm not prepared to accept any of this, of these goods, none of the food, nothing at all. I'm going to scrap the whole lot, which I think a lot of this food or a lot of these goods could have been given out, and certainly not just to throw the whole lot away. But then he made that decision, not our decision, his decision. So he incurred costs of about 25 million, and he sued against our engineer who signed off that racking. What could not be determined is why it fell down. What we think happened is that one of these little forklifts, which goes round and puts the pallets onto the racks, one of these forklifts hits one of the legs of these racks, causing it to come down. And once one comes down, you get this kind of domino effect. One falls against the other, falls against the other. And we think that's happened. Also, what was a bit suspicious at the time, there were cameras in the warehouse looking down the aisles. So you'd have a camera there, you'd have 1, 2, 3 cameras looking down those aisles. The cameras looking down the aisle that collapsed were not working that day. That's what we're told. Oh, I hear a hint of suspicion there. All right. Yeah, precisely.
Martin,
Yes.
can I just please ask something?
You can ask anything. It's an open discussion.
Has there been instances where the rectification costs were higher than the limitation of liability?
Oh,
So
very
let's
much so.
say,
Very much so.
so
I
let's
get
say
you.
the consultant limited their liability, for example, to 2.5, but they
Yes.
can see that there's some cracks and there's something that's going to go wrong, but the rectification costs are now going up to what they've limited their liability to.
Yes. I'm going to come just now. Just hold on one second. How many more I got? A couple more, and I'll show you that very thing.
Thank you so much.
Okay, coming up just now. I'm just checking the time. 15 minutes. Okay, I've got to watch it now. Okay, so what happened here is that they held us our insured liable, but they couldn't tell us why it fell down. I think we pretty know why it fell down because the cameras weren't working. So I think that's self-explanatory. And this whole case collapsed because they could not show why it fell down. And we know why. One of these little things hit the legs, and the whole lot came down. I still think, I mean, if you look there on the left-hand side, those are still on the pallets. They're still wrapped. That can be given out to a lot of people. Those were huge bags of rice. Now, that rice could be given away, but that's a separate discussion. Okay, let me go forward. Okay, here's one here, which is an interesting one, and it addresses what you just asked. These are student accommodation. Now, I don't know about your student accommodation. Mine didn't look like this, I can assure you. But anyway, this is student accommodation. And this was down in Cape Town, as I could imagine. This was down in Cape Town. And our engineer designed, you look underneath, that is a garage underneath for our students' cars. I can imagine what they drive, because they can afford this. But anyway, so just on completion, our engineer went down for the final signature, the final sign-off, and they issue what you call a beneficial occupation certificate. And only once you give a beneficial occupation certificate can you, in fact, occupy the building. So in December, we go down there, we check everything, and we see there's some very severe cracks in the slabs supporting the building. We go back, we do a design check, and we found, in fact, we are 60% under-designed on our reinforcing steel. What happened here is that an engineer did the design. It was signed off, it has to be, by a PRN, a professional registered engineer. He didn't check the design, he just signed it off, which was wrong, obviously. He should have gone back and checked the design. He didn't do that, he just signed it off. So here we're facing with a rectification cost. All these steel beams you see here are to hold up the building after the cracks were found. So all these are new columns, these are new steel beams going in, all this to hold the building up because it was under-designed. So the question you just asked is an interesting one here because we're looking forward to what's going to happen here. So the repair cost here is about 10.5 million rand to repair this. His limitation of liability is 2.5. So we have said to the client, you've entered the contract, your maximum we can pay out is 2.5 on behalf of the client, and that's it. The developer is not accepting, even though he signed the contract, he's not accepting that he's limited his liability to 2.5. He's taken this matter now, and this in fact will end up as either an arbitration or a court case, more likely an arbitration in terms of the contract. So he's not accepting the limitation of liability, and this is the first one we've had where the limitation has not been accepted. So we're going to be very interesting how this in fact pans out. If this goes against our engineer, then it books the whole Brock's agreement into question, because therefore if you limit your liability, the client accepts that limitation, but it's then overruled. I'm not sure how we'll go forward on it. So that's the question you asked. Yes, certainly. 10.5 compared with 2.5 of limitation of liability. I've got one more where you asked just now. Let's see if I come to it just now. So that's a typical example where we would normally pay out the 2.5 and the client would take the remaining 8 million as a knock on the chin. He's saying, I'm not prepared to accept that. I want the whole 10.5 paid by the consultant. The consultant can't afford 10.5. When we pay the 2.5, he can't afford the 8 million. So it's a little, I mean, what you're going to end up with is his wife and kids. I mean, what's he going to end up with? So, yeah, I don't know how he's going to sue him when the money's not there, but we'll see going forward. That's going to be a very interesting matter, how this one pans out, and we'll be watching it very closely, because all these contracts will come into question if, in fact, they rule against us. This is one you just asked. This is a 3 buildings going up in Johannesburg. These are apartments. They range in size, and I went into it. They range in size from 25 square meters up to about 80. I went to a 25 square meter apartment, and it's quite small. In fact, it's very small. But anyway, here we got the situation that the contractor had reached. He put 2 floors of basement in for the parking, and he was up 4 floors above the ground, as you see there, when they started noting severe cracks in the building. We then, because of severe cracking in the building, he had to prop this building from end to end. He propped the entire 2 basements, and some of the ground floor was also propped up because of these severe cracks. We then went out and we did a design check on this, and our engineer had totally under-designed this building. What is happening here, and we also were seeing a lot more of it, is that what the program gives you is correct. Okay, and they're accepting what the program gives you. The problem with a program, as most of you would know, it's rubbish in, it's rubbish out. If you give the incorrect data into a program, you can't expect the program to know that. The program will only work on what you give it. There's no little brain in there. So you put the wrong data in, you get the wrong data. And here he put the wrong data in, but he accepted the data that came out, and he designed the building on that data, and it was wrong. So he was way under designed on all the steel, on the columns, etc. And because of that, and I'm not going to bore you, because of that, we had to put 54 additional steel columns in. I think I've got a lot. Yeah, here's the steel columns. So we've got 54 of these steel columns in place to hold the building up. We didn't like this design. We then had it double checked again, but by that stage they were well advanced in the remedial work. There were other ways of doing it, but the cost of remedial work was 120 million to repair this building. The cover under the policy, and they tipped the proceeds of the policy gave them 100 million. So regardless of the change of design, we couldn't get the remedial work below the 100 million covered by the policy. So we accepted, even though we didn't like the remedial work design, we accepted it, and the insurers paid out the 100 million in terms of the policy. The other 20 million was carried by the client. This client has not said, I'm not prepared to accept that I've got to pay 20 million in. He's accepted this one. The previous one, he's not accepted. He's in fact taking it. He's appointed attorneys already. The insurers have appointed attorneys now to look after the engineer. And we'll see how that pans out. I'm not quite sure how it'll go. I don't know. It'll be very interesting to see. There's a lot more legal brains on the other end of this call than me who will tell me that would work or that wouldn't work. I don't know. This is a pedestrian bridge, also in Johannesburg, and our engineer designed this bridge. This bridge was made in 3 sections off-site and transported to the site and erected. We were very clear on our drawings. That's the concrete block on the ground, or the thrust block, or the foundation on which the bridge is supported. And those steel plates have to be grouted. So you position them, you adjust the bridge, you get the curvature of the bridge correct, and once everything is in place, You then grout that up. You push in cement and sand mix between the plate and the concrete, and that in fact locks that in place. That was not done. So when they poured the concrete for the deck, that's what happened to the bridge. It all deformed very, very badly, went all over the shop. And they've held us liable as the engineer, even though the contractor didn't do what he should have done by putting the grout in. They said your professional duties included supervision. You should have supervised and you should have known that grout was not in place when they were going to pour the concrete. You should have stopped them. You should have let them put the grout in, then let them pour. So they held us liable as the engineer. We had a very long discussion. They wanted to take this away, take it back to Springs and remanufacture this bridge. We said you could repair it in place. So there's a lot of dispute. The initial claim was 12 million, which was to take that down, take it back to Springs, reassemble it and bring it back again. We eventually reached agreement after almost a year of arguing that we will give 2 million and that in fact could be repaired in place. And that's what we've done. We've settled for 2 million, which was within the sum insured, and this matter has now been settled, thank goodness.
Perfect. Thanks, Martin. Before we go to closing comments, I just wanted to ask, do you see more claims on rectification cost or remedial?
Rectification costs at the moment, where we're going now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Perfect. Okay.
It's just, and Sushi, not to make, I don't want to harbour on about it, but really, more likely the broker rather than the insurer. The broker's really got to look at what their client is entering into. What contract are they entering into? I know the brokers can't comment on the contract per se, but I think to at least say what contract, what is your limitation? But so many of these are going in with no contract, and it's really a big problem. These really a big problem.
All right. Not sure if there's any further questions. Fiso, from your side?
Nothing from my side. Thank you so much, Martin. As always, what an incredible and insightful presentation. And also thank you for just always being here to give us wisdom in terms of the built environment, because we are so aware of everything that is happening, and it's all because of you. Yeah, and thank you to our brokers for joining us as always. We had an incredible attendance today. Thank you to the claims team for arranging as well. And yeah, thank you so much. If there's any other questions, please drop them on the comment or on the chat, and we will be able to then answer on email if anything.
No, thank you so much, and thanks to everyone who listened. I hope something came out of it, even a little bit of knowledge come out of it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Martin. Thank
Thanks
you,
for
everyone.
arranging. All the best.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Well done, guys. Well done.